I'm Melissa Shanahan, and this is the Velocity Work Podcast, episode number 109. This podcast is for attorneys who are running their own firms. We explore tactics, tools, and stories related to pushing past simply lawyering well and into building a successful firm. Working in your firm and working on your business are two very different things. This podcast focuses on the latter. Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to this week's episode. So last week's episode was with my husband, Derek, which was kind of cool. It's a longer episode than normal, and both of us, I think, had a lot of nerves about that going out, but hopefully it was useful and or entertaining and fun for you guys. But the whole purpose of the episode was really to lay the groundwork for what I want to share with you this week, specifically stemming from the documentary Never Given about Sir Alex Ferguson. It's so good, you guys. If you haven't watched it, you can watch it on Paramount Plus. I think that's the only place you can watch it. And if you aren't a subscriber to Paramount Plus, then if you have an Amazon Prime membership, then you get a free trial of Paramount Plus. So maybe that's just your in, right? To go watch it. So anyway, my attempt today is to share some of the things that stood out the most to me, but I thought so many times when I was rewatching this, I just literally got done about 7 minutes ago, watching it for the second time and writing down things that I wanted to share, et cetera, et cetera. And there's so many times that I thought when I was watching it, I cannot do this justice. Like, I don't even really know why I'm trying, but that's all to say, like, you really do have to watch it to get the full experience, because the things I'm going to share with you today, I think are so profound. But when you hear it in his words, in his tone, with his accent, in his heart, you're seeing the reflective gaze on him as he's thinking, as he's talking. It's so deep and so meaningful. The music that's paired with it, I think it just is perfect. I mean, I was on the verge of crying several times just because you see the triumphs, but all the triumphs that came after all of the really hard stuff, and his words about all of that and his reflection about all of that. So it's pretty cool. Okay, so I'm going to try to do this justice. Here's a couple things I'll say right up front. If you do watch the documentary, without question, put the subtitles on, because it's so much easier. There's just words that you won't get if you're listening to him because of his really thick Scottish accent. And so it's worth having the subtitles on. That way you don't miss things, because it's kind of the small, subtle things that are important and often in what he's saying. So that is one thing I'd recommend. And the other thing I'll say is, although I'm sharing the things with you that felt really profound to me from the documentary that I think will give you something to chew on, there's plenty of moments in this documentary where he is owning the fact that he isn't proud of many moments. And I love that. And I'm not sharing necessarily that stuff here. I mean, that's part of his story, and you should listen to his story, but that's a part of it. And I actually think that was brilliantly done, how he owned that at nearly every turn. Now, as he's reflecting, he's owning that as he's looking back and being asked questions about things. That's part of the journey. So, I'm going to share the good stuff with you today, but there's a lot. There's a really full picture that you need to get by watching the documentary. All right, so towards the beginning of the documentary, they do a good job of showcasing what he came from, where he came from. I don't remember the name of the town at the moment, but very blue collar, very poor. Most of the people there worked in the shipyards, which was extremely hard work. He talks about that. And that's what he grew up around. And as a boy, he played soccer, which most young men did. And then he kept playing. He was making a little bit of money playing for a club. A lot of people were. That wasn't uncommon. And eventually started to get worn out because he was doing an apprenticeship as a tool maker. And so he'd have to, be at work at 6 a.m., work extremely long hours, and then go play a night game, get home at like 1 a.m., and then do it all over again. And so he got burned out, and there was travel involved, meaning like, a few hour bus ride. And it was just a lot. Over time, it took a toll on him. He wasn't sleeping as much as he should have, et cetera, et cetera. And so eventually he just got burned out enough where even though soccer had been so important to him, he was just too tired for it. So he started blowing it off, which was a huge problem in his household. His dad was basically saying, why are you going out tonight? You have a game tomorrow. And he was like, well, it doesn't really matter. And his dad was like, it means everything. Like, you're not going out. And so they had problems, and he left home. His dad and him didn't talk for 2 years. And so it's crazy, the dynamics. I mean, soccer was everything to these people, to this town. So much so that it's not like his dad thought he was going to be a pro. That's not what it was about. Just soccer is a culture. It's a way of life. It's meaningful. And his dad was not okay with him not staying plugged into it. So, and this town had 2 teams. One was called the Rangers. One was the Celtics. And the Rangers were more the Protestants team, and the Celtics were more the Catholics team. And there was a lot of true fighting between the two back then. It was a problem if a Protestant got married to a Catholic. You could tell from the documentary, it was a very divided town and time. And football was this deep passion underneath all of it. It's quite fascinating to watch. Basically, there's more to the story than this, which is totally why you should watch the documentary. But essentially, he was getting into trouble. He got arrested at one point. He was just thrown in the towel. He actually got his papers to go to Canada. And right before he was supposed to leave, there was a game that he didn't want to play. He tried to phone it in and literally call in sick. I mean, he had somebody call in sick for him and to lie. And the coach came and found him and said, "You're playing. So show up. You're playing." And the game was against the Rangers, which was one of the big 2 teams in this town. And so he showed up, and he ended up scoring a hat trick in that game, which was the first time that had ever been done in the Rangers stadium against the Rangers. And a hat trick, which I didn't know. I had to look it up to be sure. But it's the same player scoring 3 goals in one game. And so this was the first time this has been done against the Rangers at the Rangers Stadium, and it got a ton of attention. And he talks about how this was it. This was the break that he had in life. To watch him talk about this is pretty powerful because he was on a bad track. And this changed everything for him. And he said, "That changed my life. Seriously, that was the biggest break of my life." And I say that to people often. Now I say, don't miss a big opportunity. Do you know you may only get one in your life? That was my one in life. That was the one that mattered for me. After that happened, he basically said there was no looking back. This was it. He was fully committed. It was this rise in him of desire to do well at soccer and really go for it. Now, as he's going for it, he happens to meet his wife. And his wife is a staple in this documentary, which is also really sweet and beautiful. And they fall in love, but she was Catholic, he was Protestant, which is a problem back then. And they couldn't get married in a chapel. So they went to just, whatever the equivalent of City Hall is to get married. And that was that. All sort of at the same time, the Rangers decided they wanted him to play for him. So they plucked him to come and play for them. And one of the first questions that they asked him was about his wife because she was Catholic. It was basically saying, like, this could be a problem. And looking back, he wishes he would have handled that differently, but he tried to just make it smooth over and make it okay because he wanted to play for the Rangers. He ended up playing for the Rangers and had some really good runs, did some really great things. And then there was a big loss that happened and they needed a scapegoat and they really put it on him, put it on Alex Ferguson. And him, and then there's some other people that played with him and were around at the time and said it was no question it was because his wife was Catholic. It was just the easiest person to throw all the blame at. So he eventually, sort of tail between his legs, left and was trying to decide what to do, but he was mad. He was so mad at management, and management meaning the coaching staff. And through this whole experience of what he went through with being the scapegoat for all of this and leaving, he just kept questioning the management, and he knew he would do it differently. He just had this belief that a different way of doing it would be more effective. They could have won some of those games. It wasn't his fault. Like, they could have won some of those games. That management was defective in his eyes. When I was watching this, and you guys will think of your own things as you're watching it, But I'll share that this made me think of when I was working at the consulting firm where I was before I left to start my own thing. And I didn't leave with the resentment that he left with from the Rangers. But one thing that I was very important and very clear to me was that there was room for improvements. Like, they were supposed to be the top of the top, the best of the best in our industry with teaching and facilitating and strategic planning. But boots on the ground, there were holes. And nobody at the top wanted to admit it or shift. It was too big of an organization to do anything quickly. So it was going to be too slow. And they didn't pay enough attention to the people who were actually implementing this stuff. That was one of the biggest reasons I left, was because no, I'm not doing this anymore. It's going against everything in me. There's a better way. I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to plug the holes, and thus creating a better opportunity for anyone that I worked with. That was what I was going for, 100%. I could see a better way, and it felt like a mission inside of me to get it out into the world. And I did. And now there's a better way. Like, I'm always constantly improving what we're doing and how we're doing it. But that big leap was meaningful, and I left in order to do it. It made that come up for me. And I'm sure many of you have something very similar. Maybe you left a firm because you wanted to do it differently. You saw a different way to do it for yourself or for your clients. So he had this flame in him, and he had something to prove to himself more than anything. He kept working on his skills. He ended up getting an offer for a job to be the head manager for a team called Aberdeen. And Aberdeen wasn't known for much. They didn't really win much. They didn't expect to win much, and that's who he was going to be coaching. So he got to take all of this, and that was a bit of his testing ground. It was the first time being a manager and going to a team that didn't believe in themselves, didn't have a practice facility. So they would practice in the parking lot or sometimes on the beach, just ragged, they didn't have belief. They didn't have resources, and turning it around to win some incredible games, actually turning it around to beat the Rangers, beat the Celtics from this little no-name club called Aberdeen. But here's the thing, and this is something we talk about a lot on the podcast, we talk about a ton with members and clients, is that he had his eyes set on something extremely specific. Yeah, he wanted to be a good manager. Yeah, he thought there was a better way to do it. Yes, he wanted to serve the team, but his eyes were set on beating the Rangers first, and then right behind that, beating the Celtics. That was a very, very specific target. There was a lot of things that needed to line up in order for them to be able to do that. So when you watch the journey of it, that's one thing that stood out to me, because it's something that we talk about so much with you guys, is that if you are not aiming for something specific, it's not that you won't do well. It's not that you might not grow. It's not that good things won't happen. But what are you doing? Like, are we just playing around here? Or are we really trying to make something happen? And if you're trying to make something happen, pick a specific goal. There's no downside to it. No downside. There's only upside, because it just streamlines everything towards that one thing. That is very apparent in his success with the things that he did. He always had his eyes set on something extremely specific. It's pretty remarkable to watch it all unfold, and they do a really beautiful job of telling the story. If you listen to last week's episode, my husband's, one of his greatest coaches that he had, played for Sir Alex Ferguson on that team, Aberdeen, and was turned into one of the greats. So that's where a lot of the influence that Derek has had from coaching, it came from that period where Sir Alex Ferguson was coaching Aberdeen. One thing I loved that he just abided by, that he talked about, was that there's always tomorrow. Whether you win or lose, there's always tomorrow. And he gave some more context with this, and basically saying his job was to make important decisions all the time. And whether he was right or wrong about the decisions that he made, there was always tomorrow. So he never looked back. He didn't do that. He didn't waste any time looking in the rearview mirror. He was always looking forward. And of course, learning along the way. And this sounds nice. It sounds pretty, but it is not always easy to do. The things I'm sharing today, I think of in the game of life that I am playing, and that my clients and members are playing, and that you as listeners are playing. It's different, right, than what the game he was playing, but it's all relevant. It's principles that are still very relevant and wise. And so when you think about there's always tomorrow and you're always looking forward, of course there's some reflection and lessons learned, but you aren't looking in the rearview mirror. You aren't wishing something was different. You aren't dwelling on the fact that something wasn't different, dwelling on the fact that you should have made a different call. None of that, because it's a waste of time. I call this indulgent. Like, it's indulgent to do that. Just look towards where you want to go. And that is exactly what he's saying. There's always tomorrow. And he abided by that deeply. He shares that he has a new relationship with that saying now because of the stroke and the things he's been through. He realizes he doesn't always have tomorrow, but he still acknowledges that it's a really useful, helpful, correct way of thinking when you're in the middle of something and you're in the middle of playing a game, because it doesn't do any good to look backwards. It is indulgent, so to speak. That's not his words. So it's useful and it's wise. But now you hear him talk about how he struggles with that now because tomorrow isn't promised for him. It's not promised for any of us, but he was faced with death. And so now you could see him spinning on that a little bit. He talks about how conviction and belief is built up in time. He says, the work I do with the players is on their character, in their discipline, and having belief in themselves and conviction and going to places like Celtic Park and believing they can win. So often we wait to win at whatever we're doing, hitting the goal, whatever. We wait to win in order to believe that it's possible. But believing that it's possible is a requirement if you want to get to where you want to go. And I appreciate what he's saying here because it's very often, it's not a light switch that's flipped on. Like, oh yeah, thanks, Melissa, good tip. So now I'm going to go believe in the big ass goal that I have. And then I think now then I'll be able to achieve it. But the truth is, it takes work. It takes discipline. You have to have integrity with honoring what you say you're going to do. And those are the little things that I work on so hard with people, with my members and clients, because it really is the muscle that will create the results that you want to create. So it's not about flipping a switch and saying, oh, okay, now I believe really hard in that goal that I want to achieve. If you can do that, great. But it's more about becoming the kind of person that can achieve that thing. And when you believe you are the kind of person that can achieve those great things, it becomes much more fluid towards the result that you're wanting to achieve. There was a pretty cool pinnacle moment that was being talked about, and one of his players was reflecting on what it was like to play for him during that time. And he said, when I look back at it now, our training, the intensity, he was testing us. He didn't want anyone next to him he knew would let him or the team down in a crisis moment. And then you see clips and some narrative around, and there was a crisis moment where, like, this is it. And everyone on the team had such strong integrity. No one was there that had that thing in them that he sniffed out, that he got rid of them. So everyone there was tested. And everyone there, when a crisis moment happens, they did come together in a way that resolved the moment. But that's because he was testing them prior, the intensity in the training, so that only what was left was real and capable. Okay, now when he got the job at Manchester United, which was the job of his life, because the Manchester United was in a bad way. They hadn't won a championship in 20 years, and they used to be great. Now they aren't, and now he's called in to work with the team. And so he said, this is what I believed in. This is what I was good at. This is what I wanted to do. So now it was question time. I was like, it's like he has a name for the phase. I loved that. Now it was question time. And so he asked himself a bunch of questions. One of them that he mentioned was, what do I really need to resurrect the club? Another one, do we have enough scouts? It was just cool to see him, though, the way that he thinks. It was question time. He called it question time. So anyway, I might start having question time. I think you should have question time. Like, if you're about to embark on something major for yourself that's meaningful to you, what if you, when you set out to go do it, before you start taking action, you ask yourself a lot of questions? It's almost like starting from scratch. There are no assumptions. Just ask questions. One of the things that came out of one of the questions, do we have enough scouts? Well, they had 2, and no one had ever really questioned that. And he was basically just saying, like, we need men in here that can be what we need them to be. And I don't have the pool of men to choose from that I need. And so basically he flooded Manchester with scouts. And then that way he could have his way with building up the Manchester club from the bottom up. If he never would have questioned that, I think that's so great. If he never would have had those questions of just the assumed this is the way it's always been kind of mentality, if he never went against that by asking questions, he never would have created greatness. He says in the documentary, a long-term approach always suited me, to go the long road to shape my future. And this is kind of part of it, right? He believed that if you get the players young enough and you breed the important values of what you're trying to achieve with them, they become the particular person that you're looking for. But that doesn't happen overnight. So, the first 3 years were brutal because even though he was making all of these calls that he felt were right to really shift and create a new foundation, it didn't happen fast, but he's playing the long game, which is risky when you're a coach because you can get fired, but he played the long game. And he said the first 3 years were brutal, and they show footage of the entire stadium. It's a huge stadium, the entire stadium yelling, "Fergie out, Fergie out, Fergie out." And abusive phone calls. His family was really paranoid. People were threatening to kill his family. Like, it was terrible. It was insane. But he stuck with it. And his son talks on the show about how he was begging his dad to just stop. Like, it's killing us. This isn't working. You're not going to win. This is not going the way you want it to go. Call a spade a spade. And basically begging. And his dad was like, I really think this is going to be great. I really think this is going to be what it could be. And his son said he was delusional. I just thought he was delusional. And we were all really upset because we were staying. And, clearly that worked out for him. And you could see how that all unfolded in the documentary. But the long-term approach and asking questions, asking the right questions, questioning the way things have always been done, so that you can start to build and create a new foundation. It's playing the long game. And I think so often people want quick wins. They want to know they're going to get a result like tomorrow. They want the money tomorrow. They want the relationship tomorrow. They want to be healthy tomorrow. This is why there's such a culture of, get rich quick or get skinny quick or find love quick or whatever. It's very, very different to play the long game. It's very different to be intentional every step of the way for the long haul. And when you do that, the rewards are so much richer and so much bigger. Yeah, there's so many different contexts you could put this in where people want this, the quick results. And there's nothing wrong with quick results. That's not what I'm saying. But at the cost of playing the long game, that's when you get into trouble. When you feel like you need to hurry towards something, that's when you get in trouble. I mean, I'm sure there were moments that he wished it would go a little faster because of the beating he was taking as a coach, but he knew better. He knew better. He knew to just keep doing the right things. And this kind of goes back to the conversation I was having with Derek last week, some of the takeaways he's had from his coaching experiences, which the wee things matter. You keep showing up. You keep doing the right things. You have integrity. You do what you say you're going to do. You work hard. Like all of that stuff, and you keep playing the long game. Make sure that you're looking out so that you can have strategy towards where you're going. Don't hurry. People that hurry get super myopic in their vision, and that will ultimately cut you short of what was possible. There's another part where he says, my experience of human beings, they like to do things the easiest way. The minute you accept a bad performance from them or a bad technical aspect of their training, they'll do it again. And this really is the wee things. A bad technical aspect of their training. I can't remember if Derek went into this last week at the podcast, but we've talked about his coach would watch film and they would come and talk to him about, hey, your right shoulder needs to dip a little bit differently. It wasn't acceptable. And once they talked to him about it, it wasn't acceptable for that not to be addressed in the future. So it is the wee things that he's talking about here. And by paying attention to the wee things, you are playing a long game. Somewhere in the documentary, there was an announcer or someone from the media saying how awesome he was at psychology. with the players. And he said, psychology is someone else's word. I call it management. Another favorite thing that he talked about was winning was always based on my own attitude to failure. You have to treat losing as part of the progress. I love the way he said that, part of the progress. It's not part of the process, although that's fine too, but just the subtle shift in the word that losing is part of the progress. And he went on to say, you have to understand that as human beings, adversity is part of life. And when it happens, you find yourself. So those moments of adversity, those moments of losing, quote unquote, that's a part of the progress. And in those parts of the progress is when you find yourself. It's when you develop yourself. It's when the character gets stronger. It's when you have an opportunity to increase the strength of integrity, the relationship between you and you. I mentioned this last week when I was talking to Derek, and I've mentioned this to like every friend that I've had dinner with since I watched this. I bring this up because I just think it's the coolest. It has stuck with me more than anything else from the documentary for some reason. He was talking about there was a time when his team was on the field and he said, we were looking a bit anxious. Like we had nerves. And he said, we weren't making the chances that we normally would make. And that's when is that the same thing as saying taking the chances that they would normally take? And he's like, no, that's different. He's saying we weren't making the chance in order to take a chance. So we weren't creating the opportunity to take a chance. So it's almost like they just weren't opening up the opportunity to be able to grab, like to actually take a chance. And I thought that was such a beautiful way of saying it because, you know, if you're given a chance, sometimes you'll take it. Depends on the person, depends on where you are in life. But sometimes you'll take that chance. But you have a huge hand in the chances that you're given. And so are you making the chances so that you can take them? It's almost like a first order thinking around taking chances. You can't take them unless you make them. You have to create the opportunity. And then when the moment appears, you seize it. And that's what he's referring to. But I just love the way that he says that. Making chances. We weren't making the chances that we normally would make. So I ask myself a lot now since I first watched that, am I making the chances here? I think about that for you guys. It's a good question to ask yourself. Are you making the chances so that you can take a chance, so that you can seize the opportunity? And there's two final things that stood out to me that I thought I would share with you today. One is when he was talking about when he started to see success, like after the third year, I think it was the third year, because the third year is when everybody was yelling at him, Fergie out, threatening phone calls, all of that jazz. And there came a point where the luck started to turn and he could see all the development that he had been doing was now starting to pay off. It was the long game, right? He had all these younger recruits, all the scouts went out, found some of the best that he knew he could mold and make into the greatest. And that's what he'd been working on. And now it was starting to turn over into that. And one quote that he said when they had their first pretty successful win was, the plan we had was now finally the foundation. I love that because I work so hard with clients and members on their plans. And it is the long game by doing that. Quarter over quarter, it feels like it's very short-term focused, and it is, but it's playing the long game when you do it that way. And I love the way he said, the plan that we had was now finally the foundation. I have clients that are there, that now they have the foundation because they kept at it quarter over quarter, year after year. They have had their sights set on something. They've had these plans. They keep showing up to get stronger and better and honor those plans. And now those plans are the foundation for this truly stable, sustainable business that they have, which wasn't the case when they really set out on this journey. Now, it's not the end all be all because with every stage of growth, there's a whole new set of challenges, specifically with communication and more dealing with team, right? A team and how to handle and keep the capacity open for the growth that you are inevitably going to see now that you've created this level of success. But it's a really good feeling when you get yourself to the place where you understand and you really can see, oh, this isn't going away. I mean, it could if we just stopped. But this is it. All the plans that we've made now have created the foundation that we have right now. And that feels so good. You don't get that foundation without making a plan and honoring the plan. And that's what he's talking about here. So it doesn't even really matter what you're talking about, business or managing a soccer club or something else in your own life with health and wellness or relationships. It doesn't matter. You have to have a plan and you have to execute on that plan and you have to stay with it. And there will be a day that plan is now your foundation. That is awesome. And the last thing that I'll share with you that stood out to me is when he's talking about when you're on the brink of winning, like big win, like the thing that you've been shooting for. When you're on the brink of it, sometimes people will let themselves be taken over by excitement and it sort of loses their focus. And he talked about how important it is that when you're on the brink of that you stay calm, you stay present, and you stay composed because you aren't there yet. And there is a time to take a breath. There is a time to cheer and jump and whatever, but it isn't until it's done. You stay composed until it's done. So the way he described it, he said, when you're on the brink of that success, you just hold it. You just hold it. You hold your focus. You hold your composure. And it doesn't mean that you can't have fun and celebrate along the way. That's not what he's saying, but literally right before the success hits. And then that's when you just hold it, keep your composure and stay really calm. All right, you guys, you got to go watch that documentary. I can't wait to hear from you guys. You could DM me on Instagram. You could Facebook message me if you want to, whatever. I can't wait to hear from you guys what you thought about it. What stood out to you is the best thing, your major takeaway. It's just so well done. So enjoy it. Enjoy it. Have a wonderful week, everyone. I'll see you here next Tuesday. Hey there. If you enjoyed this podcast, I highly recommend you come and check out Mastery Group. It is where owner attorneys come together to study this material, apply it, and thus create really big results for their firm and for their life. So come on over, velocitywork.com/join to get more information and get started. Show notes from this episode can be found at velocitywork.com/podcast.